What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another exciting episode of CollectCo Connection, your one and only accounts receivable podcast. Today, we have the pleasure of sitting down with Cole Ackerman, the dynamic director of sales development over at Abstrakt, where he's revolutionizing sales with cutting-edge conversational intelligence software. At Abstrakt, Cole leads the charge in real-time call guidance, automating quality assurance, and enhancing agent performance within the accounts receivable management space. His expertise not only streamlines operations, but also fosters genuine human connections in the digital sales landscape. Join us as we dive deep into Cole's visionary strategies, exploring how he's transforming challenges into opportunities and setting new standards in sales development. My man, Cole, welcome to the show.
What's up, Chris? Thanks for having me, man.
Of course. Of course. Funny story about my man, Cole, is the way that we actually initially coordinated or connected was cold call. Hit me with the PBO, that permission-based opener, and lucky for I gave him the 45 seconds. I think that's what you asked for.
15.
15. Dang. Okay. And then I gave him the seconds, and look at what transpired out of it. So cool. Super awesome to have you on, man.
Appreciate it, Chris. Yeah, that was fun. Appreciate the 15 seconds that we turned into 10 minutes.
Of course. The greatest connections come out of just about 15 seconds. So I think you really locked it in.
There's no doubt about that.
So let's get started, man. Look, I always like to kind of kick off these podcasts just with like a little backstory on, what's your sales journey been like? Where you've been up to? How did you get to the point at where you are now, running the ship over at Abstrakt?
Yeah. And I'll preface with, I can't believe you put me after John Erickson being on here. So I've got some big shoes to fill here. It's been in sales since 30 now. So, got into sales when I was like 20. Really when I was in kindergarten, selling pencils out of my backpack. But
man. Swinging at recess.
Yeah. We won't start there. No, when I did 5 years in college, my fifth year was like, I took 2 classes a semester. So it was like super chill. So I was able to take on a full-time role, and I was selling like insurance, warranty products, revenue products to car dealerships and power sport dealers, as well as Harley Davidson dealerships. So I was driving all around the southeast of the U.S. and doing like 20,000 miles a month in my car, and just literally, walking in dealerships, cold knocking.
That's
after about 2 years, I got burnt out on that and got into SaaS, and been to a couple different companies in the SaaS world. I've been a SDR, BDR, AE, and now I'm director of sales development over here at Abstrakt. Been here for 2.5 years, which it's flown by. So, but yeah, that's kind of my quick journey into sales.
Dude, I love it. Look, I mean, you're sales from the ground up. It's funny that you mentioned kindergarten, because one of the cheap comments that I always make, especially on this show when I'm talking to other sales reps, is, look, nobody's sitting in middle school going, yeah, I'd love to be a sales agent. Like, it's high pressure. You can be on the top of the world one day and just slash to the bottom of the earth the next day. And it's true. Like, I feel like most professionals, sales finds us. We don't quite find it. And then we come up with a mechanism to make it work. So that's awesome. It sounds like from boots on the ground into the SaaS and the fintech market space, you've kind of seen it all. So that's dope to hear.
Yeah, it's fun. It's funny you say not wanting to grow up into it. My dad's a lifetime sales guy, so he's been with the same company. But I'll come back to that. He's been with the same company, running sales for longer than I've been alive. So I kind of grew up into the world of like old school traveling around, going to conferences. Like, our vacations were centered around these claims management conferences, and really cool destinations. So I knew early on the sales was not what I wanted to do, because I just saw the travel and all of that stuff. I always wanted to be some sort of sports agent, which is still sales, but funny how quickly it came around when I got into college and started like taking courses around marketing and lead gen and analytics and stuff like that. So where it was like, okay, there's more avenues of sales than just the old school door knocking and everything. So,
dude, no, I love that, man. I love that. And actually, I mean, kind of a solid segue into really want to jump into what you're doing at Abstrakt. Like, can you tell some of the listeners, like, what is Abstrakt? How has it found its place in the accounts receivable market space? Like, tell us what's up.
Yeah. So basically what Abstrakt does is we provide real-time agent assist technology, basically automates QA and the compliance processes for call centers, contact centers, and provides voice analytics. Really what all that means is we're providing transparency to leadership on like, hey, how do we replicate our top reps across the entire agent pool? Like how do we find our top 10 agents? Like, why are they collecting so much more? And then how are we replicating that across the entire group? And again, all that's through agent assist. So, real-time call guidance technology for agents. And then the output of that is just voice analytics, like soft skills, hard skills, really diving into, again, like what's going on the floor versus just, the old school way of, we all know, and we still hear this all the time, of people randomly listening to calls and scoring 10 calls per agent per month, or 5% of all calls scored based on like call length or disposition, maybe if they're using a disposition. So our customers, again, they look to increase top line revenue, so really increase collection efforts. And we're actually about to release a really cool customer story. Large collections group that we work with, they increase their collections by 67% per new agent.
No way.
And they were able to increase their tenured agents collection effort by 50%. So they 1.5x their tenured agents output just by implementing some sort of guidance tool. And
That's
then
monster.
it's crazy. So and then we have a couple other cool customer stories, like decreasing QA resources, like again, going back to the manual process of QA, like how cumbersome it is to go find problems from calls, or problem childs, I guess you could call them. But what it boils down to is like, how do we find potential lawsuits, like compliance issues?
Big time.
So again, we have a customer that went from like 5% of all calls scored to obviously 100% of all calls scored through our technology, but they were able to decrease their QA resources by 83%, which amounts to hundreds of thousands of dollars.
That's monster, man.
So again, all big, a lot of talking there, but again, just increasing top line revenue, decreasing resources is what our customers look to do through our platform.
No, I love it. Let me dig a little bit deeper. I'm obviously super familiar with Abstrakt. I'm familiar with other type of outfits that are supporting call centers, BPOs, collection agencies. So you guys are obviously call scoring. If there's any scoring capacity, that helps any supervisor or manager easily identify, like, look, if your average is 8 out of 10 and you see a 4 out of, it's the type of stuff that helps me with what I'm doing, because I get to easily use analytics to isolate the one that is going to need my attention, rather than, to your point, trying to audit as many calls as possible, skipping ahead, which is really not an effective practice. Sorry, go.
No, I was just gonna say exactly like, so we'll put a story behind this. So like the genesis of our company, we've been around for about 5.5 years. Our founder CEO, Greg Greffner, my direct boss, he was a VP of sales at a SaaS company before he launched Abstrakt. And his frustration, they used a tool called Gong, which everyone knows.
I'm familiar. I know some LinkedIn buddies over at Gong.
Yeah, great company, great tool, very much so. Gong is really powerful when you're using Zoom and Salesforce. Like their integration into Zoom and Salesforce is next level. But again, it's more of a SaaS focused tool because it's screen capture. It does pulls all these fields from Salesforce, etc. So his frustration was he was wasting all of his Saturdays and Sundays reviewing calls, not just Zoom calls, but cold calls. But it was after the fact. And on Monday, he'd be like, hey guys, he had a whole team of AEs and SDRs. Here's all the issues that I found. Let's go coach them and role play them. He'd go the next weekend, view calls Saturdays and Sundays, same problems, same issues. Monday, why are we still making these mistakes?
Yeah.
So his thought was like, why can't we just implement a tool or create a tool that prevents errors from happening in real time? So again, I'm Abstrakt, a desktop application that sits next to a TCN or a LiveOps or a Five9 and guides agents through their call based on the script that they're presented with.
Right.
And then maybe based on Chris, you throw me an objection, or like, hey, I just lost my job, or screw off, I'm not paying this. Abstrakt is also prompting them how to respond to those things.
Okay, solid.
So again, the output of that is we're capturing 100% of calls and saying like, coming back to your point, hey, Chris, this agent, they dropped the F-bomb. They only got through 2 of their mini Mirandas. And by the way, they were on the phone for 30 minutes. Like maybe a call we need to go pay attention to.
Yeah.
Like what happened there? So,
No, it's so money being able to use those type of analytics, because I mean the other way is archaic at this point, and there's that's what I love about SaaS and our fintech space is, like you mentioned, Gong. There's a handful of others that kind of operate in the same capacity, but there are so many different pockets where the specific and unique nuances that like Abstrakt is able to employ speaks directly to the market that it's targeting in terms of an ICP. And it's not some overgeneralized like, oh yeah, we could work for this. We use it with your sales. In fact, that was going to be one of the questions is, do you guys have any clients that use Abstrakt for more of like a sales department rather than like outreach from a collections agency?
Yeah. So, I mean, outbound collections in a sense is a sale. Like you're trying to convince someone to forfeit income that they would spend elsewhere to pay off a good or a service that they've already paid for and didn't plan on paying for. So like in a sense, you're selling them on why they should give their money to you versus going out to dinner or whatnot. But to your question, like we certainly have teams that are using Abstrakt for sales and service. Operate, and obviously 65% of our customer base is in some sort of financial service.
For sure.
Collections, banks, unions. But yeah, like we look at collections as a sales use case because it, outside of those inbound, easy,
the low-hanging fruit, if you will.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So, we look at that as a sales use case.
No, for sure. Well, I think one of the monster things going back to Abstrakt kind of fitting the pocket specifically for the arms industry is you were saying you guys plugged in a ton of the compliance requirements, and that's kind of that missing gap with some of the other, I would say, more generalized programs, is that compliance component is so key. You know this probably as well as we do, like regulations are changing week over week, and now it's even being levied at a state level. Like I'm sure obviously what's going on in the healthcare world right now with different new regulations is just brutal to stay on top of. And then not to mention the impending changes that are to come with what's going on with like the CFPB. And so having an outfit that dedicates itself to those compliance changes and making sure that the AI learning module and all those different components are able to actively stay with the times. That's why you guys are fitting in so hot, I think. It's a huge differentiator.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like if you ask any of our financial service, FinServ customers, how they would describe Abstrakt as like a CYA or a compliance tool.
Yeah, CYA, man.
You know what I mean? And like, we've seen a lot of our financial service, really collections customers will line item Abstrakt as, into the compliance budget, which is like, they won't put it in a call center budget or an operations budget. Like it's coming from compliance, which is crazy. That like, we would have never thought that's where, where the money comes from. It doesn't matter to us, but like, it's cool to see that like, that's how they're labeling Abstrakt as basically.
And that's the one that is like probably the most appreciative department going, hell, finally, I have somebody who speaks my language. They're walking the walk and they're helping me protect my firm. So
exactly.
That's crazy, dude. I love that. No, I'm a big fan of Abstrakt. I think that there's a huge space in this market. Obviously, you guys are already killing it. I want to go to, so obviously a component of Abstrakt is the AI learning modules. Obviously there's active listening as well. I just got back from RMAI in Vegas, the Receivable Management's conference.
We were out there.
One of the craziest sessions that I went to was on like, where is AI going in the next 5 years in our industry? And so I just kind of wanted to pick your brain about what you've heard, what you know, and kind of your impression of how we're going to be able to expand AI. Actually, regulation is going to be built into it as well. But regulation aside, like how bonkers can the use of this type of data and accessibility become for us? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that we were at RMAI too, which was, I mean, it was an awesome show. We were at ARMTech as well, which like the whole theme was AI, like AI, which it's such a broad term used now just because of GPT and Open AI and Gemini and
Right.
all these things. That being said, I think especially this industry is taking a step back before they go two steps forward of like, or they should, in our opinion, of like before we dump our data into an open, an open AI or
Yeah.
Gemini or whatever, like we need to know where that's going. Because if we're aggregating Cedar's
Bingo.
data with all 100 of these other collections, customers' data, and then let's say OpenAI is using all that data to help learn their overall model, that means that there's PCI, PII, PHI data
It's all over the place.
intermingling. So I think it seems like there's a lot of like, I don't want to say hesitancy because we're having a lot of just based from our perspective, like we have a lot of good security parameters in the back end of who we're built on and who we partner with. But like we still have prospects and folks we meet with that are just very hesitant on even setting up a second demo or getting further into a technical call because it's like we're dealing with really sensitive information.
Yeah.
Like, and we have to be 1000% certain that that info is not going into the wrong hands because if it does, like that's the end of your.
That's the end game. No, you're so right.
I think the security and security is good. Like if you're doing the right things and you have the right systems in place, like, it's easy to talk to. It's not when you start having vendors that like beat around the bush and like are doing circles. It's like, oh, okay, that's a red flag.
No, exactly.
I'd be curious to hear your take because this was a big buzz. Like, do you think that we're going to be replacing humans in the collections world specifically with bots? Like, I know there's companies that do that already.
Oh yeah.
But it's for like mundane tasks, right? But like, do you think we'll get to a point in our lifetime to where, like,
you know what?
Do you know what I mean?
I for sure know what you mean, and I'm gonna say a hard no way, a hard no way. The evolution of AI. Somebody, I forget, there was like a sales coach who made a comment about AI and the human connection. And she said like AI and ChatGPT is an amazing human thought partner. It's not the absolute, it's not the end all, it's a thought partner. And so being able to leverage a really cool technology to make our lives easier, to make us more professional, to be more in line, I really think that that's the direction that we got ahead. And I think that you made a super powerful comment just with respect to AI's evolution in our industry. I do think that we should take one step back before we take the two steps forward. Because right now, look, in the United States, there is zero regulation over how AI is used. Give it 4 or 5 months, I'm sure the first one is going to sprout out. But the only real AI regulation right now is the EU AI Act and how they are controlling that type of data and use over in Europe. And like right now, I think that the smartest way to leverage AI in terms of the take a step back is, dude, use AI to formulate the best workflows and your processes. So leave like PII, personal data, consumer info out of it, but have it create just some really stealthy processes for you that you know are going to work, tried and tested. But going into the use of, AI on PII or personal data, when I was at RMAI, one of the wildest things, it was Heath Porter, I believe, in the AI session. Yeah. It was, so everybody wears their Fitbit or their smartwatch or whatever, and it's like they're already developing technologies to use that type of individual time-bound data to see, hey, this guy didn't sleep really well last night, or this guy's heart rate or heart pressure is off the charts. And then using that type of analytic to build into an already established propensity to pay model. So like, how likely are they to cooperate with me if I call? And then having like every single file scored on your side going, you know what, this guy slept rubbish, probably not going to call him today. We'll do a check back tomorrow. Or like get a trigger that goes, yo, this guy had the greatest night's sleep of his life. You got a yeah, pretty high probability that he's going to be down to rap with you. It's scary, but I just think that's so wild. And it clearly shows me that we haven't even scratched the surface of how this technology and this use is going to expand. So,
that's such a wild, and I'll back, come back a little bit on the PII, PCI, like from Abstrakt's perspective, just not getting feature based, but we have a very minimalistic approach to how Agent Assist is created and utilized by our customers. There's a lot of other players in the space that have all these bells and whistles and lights and emojis and all this stuff that distract agents. It's just not the approach we've taken. I say all that to say, like, we're still sensitive and redact like PII, personal information from our transcripts and audio files, just for the record. But again, I think to your point, it's like, how can we first automate this example, QA? Like, let's take a smaller agency. They're, again, manually scoring calls. Okay, perfect. Let's use maybe a prompt to help score those manual calls. Okay, now we're good with that. Let's move to something like Abstrakt that scores 100% of calls and helps you find those 10 calls that actually matter versus 10 random calls. So I think to your, crawl, walk, run in this day and age of AI, I think is a big thing.
No, 100% agree. I'm trying to think, even down to, so you had mentioned earlier, and in that question that you posed to me was like, what's the likeliness of AI agents becoming employed? And look, I demoed with a ton of AI agents over at RMAI, and some of them, we're getting to a point where it's pretty good.
They're good.
So some of the advice that I had heard is, one, especially for the U.S. market, I don't know, I feel like U.S. market is probably harder to fool in that capacity. It could be wrong, but the use of an AI agent right now, one, I think that if it is like an over-the-phone call, let the person know right away. Hey, Cole, this is Chris. Just to let you know, you're talking to an AI agent right now. I'm happy to help you. However, if at any point you want to be directly transferred to a live agent, you just let me know and I'll hand you off. And I think that just kind of building that type of foundation or introduction, that's the way that it should be used. Like you said, for the mundane tasks. Like, hey, to be fair, I got this letter. I really just want to pay this bill real quick. Oh, great, Cole. I'd love to help you access that banking information. But anything deeper down the wire, dispute management, like nobody wants to have a dispute negotiation with a robot. We're just not there yet. So
no, totally. And I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. Like unsolicited.
Disclaimer.
Your disclaimer is. But I'm pretty sure there is legislation in place in the U.S. that if you're using an AI bot, you have to say that on the front of the call. Like, hey, this, again, to your point, like, hey,
I
Chris,
think there is, yeah.
Like, I'm pretty sure there's some sort of, if it's not in place yet, it's coming down the pipe, which makes complete sense.
No, for sure. Well, shoot, they've even incorporated that into, I don't know if it's on LinkedIn. It probably should be. But I feel like if you're going to upload a video on YouTube or even in some places on Facebook, you have to like click a button to acknowledge that this was not fabricatedly made in an AI world at all, or even if you use small components. And so, as I said, man, those regulations are coming whether we want them to or not. Yep. And so going back to your power statement, that one step back before we take the two leaps forward, I think is prime for anybody operating in this world, because the last thing that any of us want to be is the example of how just absolutely wrong it could go if it does go wrong. So,
no, I mean, there will be plenty of those. Like I'm sure we'll be, if we haven't already, but there will be plenty of those that we'll read about or get newsletters in the next, 24 to 36 months of, hey, these people aren't around anymore because of this and this.
Yeah. Dude, it's such a scary landscape. Anyways, man, I know that we ran over time a little bit, but dude, super pleasure meeting you. Super pleasure talking to you. I can foresee this becoming a recurring trend where we get to connect and collaborate, hear a little bit about your world, mix in a bit of my world. And so really appreciate you coming onto the cast today, man.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate having me, man. It was a blast.
All right. We'll see you next time, Cole. Appreciate you, brother. All right.